Mardini!
That's what I'm talking about.
Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
That'll rock this place. That'll rock this place. Rock this place. Rock this place. Rock this place.
Hi, and welcome to the first ever episode of Data, Pharma, and Fika. This has been in the works for a while, so I'm so excited that we're finally launching this podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I work here at Captario, which is a Swedish tech company that helps pharma companies with forecasting, data analysis, and strategical decisions. This, though, is a thought-leading podcast aimed to share knowledge, experience, and expertise, mainly in the fields of data and pharma, but all while doing it over Fika. Have you ever wondered how Alexa works and what part machine learning played in that? Or how machine learning can help in the pharma industry? Then you've really come to the right place, because in this episode, we will be discussing machine learning. Throughout this podcast, we will invite some of the brilliant minds in the industry to shed some light and decode some very interesting and current topics. Everything from AI to data analysis to how you make a medicine. So bring a cup of coffee, your cup of tea, or even your Capri Sun, and join us for Fika. The brilliant mind of today is Mats Jirstrand, who is an associate professor in automatic control and the head of systems and data analysis department at Fraunhofer Chalmers. Mats has over 30 years of experience in machine learning and has many publications published both in Sweden and abroad. Mats, big welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm super happy that you were able to join us for Fika. How are you enjoying it? What are you having?
I have a cup of coffee and a chocolate cake.
Chocolate cake. And I have a sponge cake, homemade actually. This is what the pandemic does to you. You bake a lot. Well, at least in my case.
Right.
Before jumping into the whole field of machine learning and what it means to be an associate professor, I just quickly want to explain what Fika is. So Fika is a Swedish word, and it is both a noun and a verb. That's how much we love Fika. And it basically means meeting someone up for a chat. It can be your friend, a colleague, your mom, your dad, your dog, doesn't matter. And having a cup of coffee and something sweet with it, like a bun, a cake, muffins, cookies, whatever you like. So it is a social thing. And I don't know how it is at Fraunhofer, but at most Swedish businesses, we usually have a Fika break twice a day, one before lunch and one after. And it is a simpler version of a Fika. So you just grab a cup of coffee with a colleague and you have a short break. And a side note on that is that Swedes really love coffee. I kid you not, I have not one, but two colleagues who bring whole coffee beans and a portable grinder to the office, and they grind their coffee here, only to have it as fresh as possible. So that is love for coffee. Let's see if we can juggle having a Fika and discussing machine learning and what it means to be an associate professor. Actually, this is where I want to start. What does an associate professor do? What's the difference between being an associate professor and having a PhD?
Okay, so in Sweden, I mean, this differs from country to country, but essentially in Sweden, you can say that associate professorship or docent in Swedish is the next academic degree after PhD. So essentially, you can say that you have about the same additional amount of publications or an experience that you have up and until a PhD. Also meaning that you might have supervised a couple of PhD students and have been a little bit more rooted in the academic world, you can say.
You do have, so it is like a higher academic title. to be an associate professor. You do have a very impressive academic background. You have been in this field for a very long time before it was this popular and this big. What got you interested in automatic control? How did this lure you in? Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, I mean, I did my PhD in '98, so quite some time ago. And before that, or what got me into the field was really the mix of advanced mathematics, but still real world applications and problems. Anything from like fighter aircraft to optimization of production in industry, biological applications and whatsoever. It's really a matter of putting mathematical context and model stuff and analyze them in terms of and use of computers.
I would say that is very cool that you actually did spot a trend before everyone else. So I would imagine that in '98 it wasn't this big as it is today. Like everywhere we look, we're talking about machine learning and how it can be applied. And now you are working at Fraunhofer Chalmers Centre. What is it exactly? So it is a research center, but what does it do exactly? What departments do you have?
Yeah. So as you said, it's a research center. It's founded by Chalmers University of Technology and the German Fraunhofer Society. And we operate according to the model of Fraunhofer that was invented in Germany, which is very much a mixture of academic research and applied activities or applied contracts. And the mission of the research center is really to bring out mathematics to the benefit of use of industry and society as a whole. So we are a non-profit organization, but we do direct funded projects and contracts with industry to equal parts to public grants and the things that we write and apply for in competition with other researchers. That secures that we are state-of-the-art research-wise, and the industrial contracts secures that we are, so to say, applied enough. Otherwise, industry would not really engage with us. And this is somehow the Fraunhofer model that has been brought to Sweden jointly with Chalmers in this case. But we are about yeah, okay, sorry, yeah.
No problem. But you're based here in Gothenburg, but you also work with companies abroad? Yeah.
So of course, I mean, the national arena is quite big, the automotive industry, manufacturing industry as a whole, also pharma industry, but we have a whole international network, so also have direct contracts and relations with quite a lot of companies abroad, both in different application areas, I would say, not just the German market, but also US and also in Asia and so on. So it's quite international activities.
So you offer so it's a just to summarize, it's a research center, and you offer both consultancy and you have innovative research in-house, and you have it in many different fields.
Exactly, and essentially you can say that we take a lot of strategic research ideas from quite early phases until its final application out in industry, and on different time points in this scale there are different kind of funding. So of course early funding and so on, we have some strategic internal money for that. Then we have the research grant, public grants, EU grants, Swedish national research funders and stuff like that. And when it has matured enough, then we can do joint projects with industry where we really apply these ideas and make some real use, so to say.
And your thing is machine learning. This is where you work. It's your expertise, and many associate it with robots, and robots soon taking over the whole wide world. What is machine learning? Break it down for us. Simple.
All right. So before that, I can just mention, as you say, robotics and so on. And it's interesting to see that at the center we are 3 departments: geometry and motion planning, computational engineering and design, and systems and data analysis. And all 3 departments have to some extent to do with, so to say, robotics, industry 4.0. There's a lot of keywords where also machine learning are kind of a part of, or it's one ingredient. And as I just mentioned, the systems and data analysis department, quite a lot of our projects are related to AI and machine learning. So which essentially is, I mean, there's a lot of different definitions and people might have different interpretations of it and so on. But one quite popular is it's the art or science of giving computers the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. So if we let that sink in a little bit, we can think of it traditionally. It's usually when you program things in computers, you are extremely explicit that first you do this, then you do that, and so on and so forth until you reach the goal. With machine learning, you build in a kind of flexibility that when you have read in the data once or repeatedly, you have kind of flexible structures or flexible operations on the data, so that patterns or rules and so on are emanates or are read off from the data, and that's kind of a process of achieving some or gain some knowledge out of the data, you can say, in a quite hand waving way. Of course, there are more maybe formal definitions, but I guess we can do with this.
If we dig deeper into what you just said, you said that you build some sort of structure and you do not program it to say exactly what you do step by step. But how does a machine learn exactly if we go deeper into that? Because we know that it can play chess, for example. Mm-hmm. I have no idea how to play chess. How does it learn? How do we build this structure?
Yeah, so maybe we can come back to chess, but we can take an even simpler example.
Okay.
If you look at the diagram and you have like data that seems to lie on a straight line in the diagram, then you can ask the computer, okay, if I know these points around the straight line, can you predict what's between the points that we have actually observed? And then you can, of course, say to the computer, okay, but can you, given these data points, can you learn what straight line is the best one that fits these points in the diagram the best? And then it's a matter of understanding, okay, what is it to be fitted? In this case, it's a straight line. And what's a bad line? What's a good line? You have to have some kind of measure of what a good line or bad line is.
So you tell it what a good and a bad line is.
Yeah, and a good line is usually one that is quite close to the data points. And a bad one is one that is far off, so to say. So this thing with distance in some way or the other, in a more maybe generalized manner, it's very important in machine learning, because your algorithms is a lot of optimization. You set up a problem, you say, okay, this is my model structure. In this case, it's a pure straight line, so it's extremely simple structure, but a straight line can have different rate of change or coefficient of change, and it can be put up and down in the diagram and so on. So there are a few degrees of freedom that you can tell the computer, play around with this and see, okay, what is the minimum distance you can get and closest you can get to the points. And when that process has finished, then you have a straight line that are very close to the points, and you can use that straight line to predict what's in between the points, or maybe outside. You extrapolate or whatever, use the model in that way.
It's interesting what you say, that you kind of say you need to set some rules of good and bad. And it just gets me thinking of something. When I was a kid and I did really well on a test, I got 10 crowns for each test, and it's about $1. And when I did something bad, my parents were really, they wanted me to apologize, and that's not right. Stephanie, go apologize. You're not allowed to do that. So there was this framework to understand what's right and wrong. You kind of had to learn the hard way what to do and what not to do. Would you say that there's a similarity between machines learning and how people learn?
Yeah, or it's at least some inspiration for a lot of different researchers. So you do like analogies and so on and so forth. if this is the same process as the inner windings of our brains, that remains to be proved, I think, really. But there's always nice analogies, and it's not for nothing that it's called artificial neural networks, because the real ones are actually in our brains.
Yeah.
And some things resemble of each other, of course. So some kind of analogies there are, of course. However, one thing that is very powerful in computers, of course, are that you can do things massively and you can repeat it millions and millions of times. So if we get back to the example of the chess game, or the game of Go, or any of these more maybe famous examples, it's also a matter of setting up the rules of the game, which are quite simple to explain to a computer what your game is all about. And then this measure of success is also something that is not fundamentally hard to describe. I mean, you should really win the game. I mean, that's part of the rules. What is to be left when everything is finished. Exactly. And then you have, of course, these parameters that before was where the line should lie and be, and so on. Now the rules are really the rules of the game instead, and in what order you are to apply these rules, what parts of the game you are to move forward at different points in time, depending on what your opponent does, and so on and so forth. And this measure of success is how often you win based on your real actions, essentially. And when you have formulated that as an optimization problem, you can run this millions and millions of times and see, so to say, learn more and more optimal ways of oppose your opponent's actions, essentially. And the better you get, the better more generic chess playing algorithm you get, so to say. And that's.
Can you give us some more examples? So we just talked about chess, but can you give us some more examples of products where machine learning has been used? I think we have it more around us than we think. And how is it used in these products? So if we take, for example, Alexa or Siri, it's kind of the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's as you say, it started to become very popular and pops up everywhere. And these voice assistants in the phones or in other apparatus are examples of that. And there it's typically that you have to interpret what is said to the computer. So you have to not only record the language or what the person says, but then you really have to sort out what it really means. So if you say turn on the channel P1 on radio, it should really recognize, okay, now it's the radio and it's a certain channel, and I start that one. If you say Spotify instead, it's a completely other application that should be started. So of course, this interpretation is important. And in the process of learning for these algorithms or the voice assistants to learn what the language really means, then there's also this, so to say, optimization procedure, flexibility of interpreting language, and a training phase before they can really interpret what you say. So it's kind of a learning the straight line again is really for this algorithm to learn how to interpret the language. So there you have one example of machine learning built into this.
And on that note, I am curious to understand, is it done in, do you teach a machine to learn in some sort of simulated environment? And I would like to take the self-driving cars as an example. I did hear about one example, something that actually happened is that a self-driving car, it did not recognize trucks from the side. It only could recognize trucks from behind. And so there was one test going on and it did not recognize a truck coming from the side. It just went through and there was an accident. Someone might have passed, actually. To avoid these kind of accidents, is it done in simulated? The more we learn, the more like careful are we? So is it done in a simulated environment?
Yeah. It's both. It's when it's possible to do simulations, then of course you augment reality or you do pure simulation and try to learn from that. What is also apparent is that there's a need for a lot of data in all these kind of situations. When it's about to learn just a straight line, as we had as an example, we can get away with quite a few points and still do a good job. But the more flexible or the more richer scenario is to be learned, the more data is really needed. And I think it's really hard to appreciate how much data is really needed when it comes to efficiently learn also complex scenario. And one of the problems with automotive industry is that the world is full of very rare scenarios. I mean, even crashes or near crashes happens quite seldom. And we also would like the cars to learn those scenarios and how to successfully avoid them or handle them and so on and so forth. So their simulation could add, of course, but we also have to be aware of that these scenarios really exists. So there's a lot of work going on to, so to say, how to bound and sandbox certain kinds of scenarios and as you say, replace part of it with simulations and train some of it, and also to some extent mix traditional robust tools for doing control in terms of lane shifts and so on, and not only rely on just learn everything from data, because we have a tremendous amount of knowledge already today in engineering that is not to be forgotten, just that we have some new fancy algorithms that can do wonderful stuff if it has enough of data. Mm-hmm. So the real challenge, I think, is really to mix these two worlds in a very good and efficient manner.
I understand. So if you aren't in the business of making self-driving cars, what are the benefits of applying machine learning?
Yeah, the benefits are that you in some scenarios it's almost impossible to, so to say, recognize the complexity without really not really measure it and take in the data into account. And one typical example is image analysis, image processing, where computer algorithms has really been extremely efficient and trained nowadays to classify different kinds of not only cats and dogs in images, but also where are there pedestrians, where are there bikes and different traffic signs, other cars, bound those entities with boxes and have that as kind of a help or tools when it comes to plan the journey and the route forward and so on and so forth.
So it does make the complexity, it can handle it in a much better way than we would be able to do otherwise.
Or I would say the human is very good at this, extremely good, and that's also what makes it hard, because a lot of people are quite used to drive the cars and think that, okay, what's the big deal? I can do this very, very easy. But then we should really understand that to do all kind of perception and learn the computers, all these kind of things, of course we should build upon already known structures and algorithms, and the rest that can be fed by data and trained that can continue to help really solve this very, very complex problem.
Usually we connect machine learning with the tech industry and we say that, well, that's for the tech field. But can you give some examples of how machine learning can be applied in different fields? Say, for example, in retail or marketing or healthcare?
Yeah, sure. Retail or food industry. There, I'm sure a lot of you recognize the scenario that you get suggestions home or suggestions on your frequent buyer card or whatever. That if you have done this and this, then maybe these products would fit you as well. And that's typically also examples of unsupervised or supervised learning, where the whole machinery behind when you buy things on your frequent buyer card is logged and are put in a big matrix essentially, and so you can be compared with other customers and other customers clusters in different kind of groups. And if you belong to one such group, you can also do some data analysis and see, okay, the other people in this group, they also buy this and this, but this particular person that is you have not done that yet. Maybe it's because you didn't know that these products existed, but if you just get some note about it, you should buy it. So this is used more and more and all the time, I would say. The same thing with Google ads or whatever, and when you're out surfing, it's exactly the same thing. Or suggestions in Netflix, it's kind of the same algorithms that are behind this, and really huge matrices that are sorted and clustered and handled in different ways by these kind of page rank algorithms.
It makes me remember The Social Dilemma, if you've seen it on Netflix. So yeah, I see the connections. But how can machine learning help in the pharma industry, for example? Can you tell us in general terms how that would work?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it can help in a lot of different places, I would say, and are already being applied in a lot context, in different contexts. Everything from, we talked about before, this thing of interpretation of speech or interpretation of text is another thing. I mean, now we have a huge corpus of articles or publications and so on for different substances and biological phenomena and so on and so forth. So just help guiding in this very, very big pile of text and information is one way where this can help. I mean, Google does a good job, or these search engines for particular phrases, but there's a lot more if you give some structure of that you are in a particular field with a particular question. You can do a lot more in a scientific publication database, for example. So that's one thing. Another thing is in corporate databases that are completely internal to the company. They can apply the similar kind of algorithms for searching, grouping documents, and find out things that could be of interest for future projects and learn for prior projects, for example. A completely different thing is as we said before, image analysis has come quite far. I mean, there's a lot of readouts in pharma developments where you have assays and you look at different kinds of colored markings of tissue of various ways, both diseased and healthy tissue, with and without the drug, and you would like to, so to say, quantify and make a more, so to say, organized approach to different kinds of quantification. So that's another thing. Pharmacometrics is still another thing where you really take samples of blood and you measure pharmacological effect and so on. There you have like time series and which can be both long and short ones. You can have new kind of sensors like wearables where you measure pretty much continuous glucose levels and get a lot of rich information where machine learning, not only straight lines, but time series, dynamical models and fitting of that kind. It's still another niche here.
So impressive. Very, very impressive. I did not know about all these factors in pharma. If we make it a bit more relatable, so nobody has missed the fact that we are in a complete pandemic with COVID-19, I'm curious to know if machine learning can somehow actually manage it or help fight COVID in some way. And if yes, how would that work?
Yeah, I think definitely, and it has already had some impact. And again, since machine learning is such a broad area, it can help, as we said, finding related molecules or in the vaccine development and so on and so forth. So this help in search is one such thing. Another thing is really to predict and manage the development of the disease as such. But then we have to remember that so far, okay, we have data, but we have not seen the whole duration of the pandemic yet. So if we had already passed this and are way into the future, and we have the whole development and all its phases, then of course it's a much easier thing to start looking into models and where we took different actions at different parts, and so to say develop a more comprehensive pandemic spread model. I mean, there are those today as well, but it remains to be seen how really predictive and predictable they are. But to some extent, this can be done already now, but it's of course much easier when you have more data in place and even more of the scenarios mapped out, essentially.
What kind of data is needed if we're gonna... There was this example, I think it was in Korea, where they had way more data to work with just to map out where exactly the spread is the highest, the people who have been diagnosed, where are they exactly? Would that work in the rest of the world?
Yeah, perhaps, but it's also a matter of, okay, what kind of measures do you have in a society, and how are people used to be maybe monitored or controlled or advised and so on. And since the whole world is so inhomogeneous, I think will not be one thing that fits everywhere. But of course, this is a very special situation, and I guess people might be more inclined to adhere to certain principles or regulations than otherwise. But there are still maybe some thresholds that are different from country to country still, which makes it hard maybe to make some real generic solutions to everybody. The vaccine is one such thing that I think is, I mean, that's hopefully going to come soon, and it's something that we hope can spread quite quick over the world to inhibit this.
So there is an ethical aspect to the whole machine learning. How much can we actually, what kind of data can we store, how much, to which extent? There is one example that I would like to bring up if we go back to the self-driving car. So if a car has a passenger in it and it's a self-driving one, and it's driving down a street and a pedestrian all of a sudden just walks by, it has a choice to make: either continue driving and hit that pedestrian, but saving the passenger that it has, or kind of driving off the street, saving the pedestrian, but perhaps killing the passenger that it has. And that is a super difficult question to answer: whom to save, and who does that decision? Is it the buyer of the car? Is it the company who makes the car? Is it society? Is there a growing ethical aspect to machine learning, would you say?
Yeah, it's definitely a growing aspect, and also people are aware of these different kinds of dilemmas. I wouldn't claim that I'm a real expert on exactly how the thoughts are or in what directions these are taking now in the automotive industry. I just have earlier examples where some automotive firms have said that we will put the driver first and the environment second. And if these kind of statements are still valid, or if it's completely out of fashion, or the lawyers or regulations express themselves differently now, I'm not really sure. But this ethical aspect is really interesting. I mean, in being part of different kinds of machine learning efforts and centers, we are, for example, part of Chalmers AI Research Centre, and also a center in Central in related to Fraunhofer. And as one example, at the Chalmers AI Research Centre, there's a particular effort with AI ethics. So that is really sorted out as an important area of its own. So all kind of internal applications and so on are to be tagged with some kind of ethical aspect and analysis around it, because it's so easy to be biased in these kind of algorithms as well, due to that maybe the data that you have captured is not representing or representative of the particular situation. And you really have to be aware of that. And when you validate or verify your algorithms and so on, really, check on this and have a look that it still makes sensible predictions and so on and so forth, because it's very easy to build in bias by selecting data or not selecting data in a good way, so to say.
Do you have experience in knowing if the ethical aspect is greater or less in the pharma industry specifically, in comparison to other business areas?
I think each and every field has its own challenges. For example, I mean, in pharma, it's well known for a long time that different ethical or different background of people can have a difference in how they react to medicine. For example, if you are more of an Asian heritage, then you have certain enzymes and stuff active in your body, so you really react differently. So this thing of have like representative populations in different kind of trials and so on, that is of course basic knowledge in the pharma industry.
Okay.
And I guess I mean, of course, that will not resolve all ethical aspects of AI, but there is at least some awareness there, which might in other businesses where you haven't been data driven for so long, it's maybe more new experiences that has to be and lessons to be learned.
All right, so if we have a company now listening into this and they feel, oh my God, I am definitely turned, I want to apply machine learning in some way or another, I want to be in the forefront of technology, what are the challenges that this company might face? I'm thinking just on the top of my head of budget, time, having the know-how.
Yeah, sure. More and more companies realize that maybe our data is really useful. There seems to be a lot of people that are doing fancy stuff with their data. But from that thought to really be able to do something, it's kind of a road of different kind of steps where you have to analyze what kind of data, how information rich is it, what do I really expect to gain that I cannot gain otherwise today. So of course it's different from company to company, but I would suggest that one really team up with some players that maybe have done this journey before, looking into read some success stories of other companies, try to see analogies in different ways, and then get some help on board of doing some first steps with a very spelled out clear goal. So not just data exploration for its own sake, but really, okay, can we at least think we can do this? And then you embark on that journey and look at the data you have. Do you need to get more of the same type of data or additional data sources into this, and then what type of algorithms? Is it pure classification of some kind, or is it more like prediction and so on? But that is usually given by what you expect to solve, what kind of problem. So it's very important to early on, I think, cut down to a few target problems that you would like to address and have a hint show that you can probably solve.
These are really good advice. We are coming to the end of this interview, but I do have one last question, which is about the future. We did cover the past. In the last decade or two, technology has developed and evolved a lot and at a very rapid speed. And it might be a bit difficult for you to say exactly, but what do you think is the next big thing? How do you see machine learning developing in the future?
Yeah, that's very hard to say, of course, but I think it will continue to address problems in more fields, and for example, it will be much more used as a vehicle in other scientific fields to push the frontiers forward. So help categorize, classify information, make predictions in models, and sort, so to say, information that will improve the understanding and knowledge in other scientific fields. And there are a few efforts in that directions around in both in Sweden and abroad, so to say. So that's one thing as such. And then all the time it comes more and more, so to say, flexible structures, model structures, as we said. With the simplest one was this straight line, but the more complex one are those that understand images and can tell what's in the image and so on and so forth. So today we have seen a lot of things when it comes to artificial classification of films or other stuff and recommendations, but also in the future a lot more in the human machine interaction. We are slowly getting more and more used to be talk to the computer, giving certain commands or directions, but there will be much more coming also in how you collaborate with robots in the production industry, for example. There's something called cobots, which are robots and humans that work together in different applications.
Okay.
But there's a lot of those, and it's hard to come up with what's really.
No. I am looking forward to seeing what this field has to offer in the future. And this actually finalizes our interview. I want to thank you so much, Mats, for taking the time and joining us for Fika, and also for breaking down machine learning for us. It was both very informative and interesting. And it is very important that we do take the time to share knowledge and expertise just like you did, because in times like these, we are facing new problems and new dilemmas, and we need new ways to face them and to push forward and to handle these kind of problems. And you just showed us how machine learning can be of help. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
If you have any questions to Mats, or if you want to know more about Fraunhofer Chalmers, you can go to their website fcc.chalmers.se. And if you have any feedback or questions to us, do not hesitate to contact us. You can go to captario.com. And if you forgot about these, no worries at all. I will have the links in the description field below. Thank you so much for listening in and for tuning in. My name is Stephanie Mardini, and I hope to see you in the next Fika for a new and hot topic. Stay safe and stay tuned.